The predominantly Islamic Arab slave trade enslaved approximately 6 to 7 million more than the European and American trades. You've probably heard a lot about the transatlantic slave trade. The horrors of the Middle Passage, the plantation economy of the Americas, and you should have. It was a devastating part of history. But what if I told you there's another part of this story, an even longer history, that's barely mentioned? The predominantly Islamic Arab slave trade enslaved approximately 6 to 7 million more than the European and American trades. It was a massive enterprise that spanned over 1,300 years, beginning in the 7th century. That's more than 3 times the duration of the transatlantic trade. Historians suggest somewhere between 10 to 18 million people were trafficked across the Sahara and the Indian Ocean to the Arab world. So again, just to reiterate, both trades were evil and can never reoccur. But the Arab trade was fundamentally different. Where the transatlantic was driven by male labour on plantations, the Arab trade focused heavily on women and girls for domestic servitude and concubinage. Historical accounts from the 10th century describe a brutal procedure that involved the complete removal of the penis and testicles, with survival rates so low that fewer than a third of the boys subjected to it were said to have survived. And the worst thing is, this isn't just a story from the past. The legacy of the Arab slave trade is still alive today. In places like Mauritania, Niger, Mali and Chad, you can find what's known as descent-based slavery, where people are still born into servitude because their ancestors were once enslaved. They are treated as property, working without pay, and are often isolated from society. In some cases, children are still sold into this kind of bondage.
People trafficking networks in Libya continue to flourish because of government chaos as rival groups battle for power.
They sell Africans over there, in Libya. They sell men. Even 15-year-old Libyans are there in a car, they're armed. They'll come and kidnap you, and they'll sell you for $70 to $150.
So why is this history so often overlooked? The simple narrative of blaming a single group for all of the world's historical injustices is easy and straightforward, but it's not accurate. True history is complex. It shows us that slavery was a global horror, not a practice confined to one race or one continent. By ignoring massive parts of history, we don't encourage unity or progress, we just foster division. A lot of the research and scholarship on this topic that I've found has actually been led by a Dr. John Alambala Azuma. He's an ordained minister from Ghana who grew up in a Muslim family.
I come from a family background where we have Muslims and Christians living together. I felt right away from that earliest ages that I wanted to be kind of a bridge. That I could be a bridge between what I call my biological family, which is the Muslim family, and my spiritual family, which is the Christian family.
His book, The Legacy of Arab Islam in Africa, challenges the idea that Islam was a more benign force than Christianity in the region. He argues that an honest look at the past is the only way forward for people of both faiths to move towards a future of tolerance and mutual respect. His current work at the Sana Institute is all about building bridges, not walls, between Christians and Muslims in Africa. As far as I'm concerned, the path to a better future isn't just about ignoring uncomfortable truths or cherry-picking facts. It's about acknowledging the full scope of human history with all its complexities and tragedies. I write a lot about this and what I perceive the only way forward to be for the Western world, and indeed perhaps one day the entire world, in my book, Absolute Justice, A Plan to Save the World. It's free when you go onto my website, absolute-justice.com. So why do you think the Arab slave trade isn't talked about as much as the transatlantic trade here in Britain, and indeed in much of the West? Let me know in the comments.
While the transatlantic slave trade is often the first thing that comes to mind when we think of slavery, it's important to know that the Arab slave trade was very much in existence and was also quite brutal and cruel. Many slaves died on a long and difficult journey across the Sahara, and those who survived often faced horrific conditions upon reaching their destination. From the brutal capture of women to work in harems, to the unjust castration of male slaves as eunuchs.